In Great Britain in mid-July, the leader of the opposition stood in the House of Commons and tore the Prime Minister and his Chancellor of the Exchequer limb from limb. The discussion was over concrete and recondite points of economic policy, and the next day all of the papers and all of the journalists and commentators were whistling over the bravura performance. Margaret Thatcher had proved herself something of a polemical juggernaut. Although her election as party leader was done over 2 years before, and although she had skillfully led her party with perhaps one or two mistakes in tactics, she was now pronounced ready. The polls indeed show the Conservatives preferred over the reigning Labour Party by about 10 points, and the council elections of last May were a convulsive rejection of the Labour Party. Still, there are difficulties. Mrs. Thatcher, as most people know, grew up the daughter of a grocer. At college, she studied chemistry. At Oxford, she was practicing her, or after Oxford, she was practicing her trade as a research chemist when, unaccountably, she became interested in the law. So working during the day, caring for her 2 children, at night she studied law. In due course, she was elected to the House of Commons, replacing Mr. Edward Heath as leader in the winter of 1975. The theme of our discussion is supposed to be, what have we learnt from the failure of British socialism? Really, this is 2 subjects. The first being, what is there to be learned from the failure of British socialism? The second, what in fact has been learned from the failure of British socialism. In a recent speech, Mrs. Thatcher said, "We observe what happens elsewhere and draw lessons from it, but we are aware that different national traditions, experience, and religious values affect the total political and economic situation." Question: does the failure of British socialism have the same meaning for the United States as, say, for Venezuela?
I think you've got to recognize at the outset that, broadly speaking, there are 2 ways in which any government can proceed. One is a way based on what you and I would call a free society, which is enshrined right at the heart of the American Constitution. The other one is a way which allows only one view, both of economics and politics, in which almost everything is either owned or controlled by the state, including the media, including the ideas, including freedom of discussion and everything. There is no freedom of discussion. Now, between those 2 ways, the free society and the totally controlled society, there are, of course, variations. I think what we've learned in Britain is that we've gradually, over the last, certainly 12 or 13 years, with perhaps a little interruption, gone slowly further and further away from the free society towards something else. At the same time, we've found, I don't find it strange, but some other people do, that we have stopped creating wealth. We've had a large number of increasing restrictions. And you've been finding 2 things. First, that we are more and more concentrating on redistributing the wealth we've got, rather than creating any more. To create more, you need a slightly freer society, and you need an incentive society. Naturally, when I see that happening, I look with very great alarm to societies which have gone even further left. That is, they've tried to redistribute even more and haven't had the incentives for people working hard on their own account, doing well for their families, and often then being able to create jobs for others. They've produced a much more prosperous society than we have. But by and large, you've got the 2 broad, different economic and political approaches.